Hey everyone, Viv here. In case you missed it, I wanted to let you know that we have a fortnightly email newsletter. We give you the latest recap on all things happening in our community. In there, you'll also be the first to know about our next events, merch drops, and exciting announcements. Head on over to levelasianpodcast.com/newsletter to sign up for the latest. Now, on to the episode.
I've experienced being on dating apps maybe since I was 20, on and off between relationships, between situationships.
Oh, sorry, what was that? Situationship? What's that?
Oh, you're really showing your Zoom?
Okay.
Traditionally, we had a simple model of a relationship. It's no longer go on date, like each other, a few more dates, engage, marriage. It's now like each other, avoid each other for a little bit, don't really be honest about how you feel.
So is this like the new 2023 version of like It's Complicated?
The like buddies kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what it is, but sometimes not with the part. Like just buddies that kind of see
just
each
emotional torture.
Yeah.
Right, gotcha.
Before we get started on today's episode, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the land of the Darug people. We would like to acknowledge and pay respects to our elders past and present and the next generation coming through. Now, on to today's episode. In this episode of the Level Asian podcast, we're joined by Brenda Van, founder of Dating App Suck, an offline dating event that brings like-minded people together in person. Brenda shares her thoughts on the modern dating scene, why it motivated her to start Dating App Suck, and shares the success of hosting Dating App Suck events across Sydney and Melbourne. Brenda also opens up to us about her struggles with mental health and how it ties in with adult relationships, along with her recommendation on finding the right therapist. Enjoy the episode.
I feel like we had that call earlier this year, and then like my memory is like terrible. I don't remember anything. Like,
Don't worry, I'm starting to get to that. I'm taking fish oils. I hope that helps.
I haven't started taking fish oils yet. But yeah, maybe the best place to start is definitely background, because you're not from Melbourne. You just made it up to Sydney. Like, how long's it been?
Coming to a month.
Wow. Okay, cool. So everything's fresh, but obviously it's like Sydney and Melbourne, right? What's your
Culture shock. I got culture shock. Literally.
What's your impression of Sydney?
I think Sydney is very different to Melbourne, both culture-wise and also the way. I think people are very direct and forward here, and it's actually catching me off guard, because like Melbourne would kind of like beat around the bush a little bit, really polite with it, really like chilled, relaxed with it. Whereas Sydney's like, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm like, oh, okay, yes, sir, ma'am.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you want to give us a little bit of background? Obviously growing up in Melbourne, what was childhood like? And then we can sort of get into Dating App Suck and stuff like that.
Cute. Okay, so I'm a Melbourne girl, born and raised, 28 years, coming to 29 years, I was in Melbourne. I decided to move up to Sydney because a lot of the things that I was doing in Melbourne was really exciting, and I felt was really, pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. But I was kind of like, I've never lived somewhere else. It's going overseas for now is probably a bit much of a leap. But I was like, Sydney seems comfortable. So I'm like, I'll make the move up to Sydney. And I think it was a great opportunity for me to think about how to expand my career, grow my brand, grow my network as well. So I was like, right time, kind of wanted to change, especially after the pandemic. So I was like, I wanted to come up to Sydney. So my background is in marketing, and at the moment I'm working in consulting. But I think for me, when I always approached my 9-to-5 career, I was kind of like, a lot of the work that I was doing, I kind of wasn't getting the same fulfillment that I was hoping to get out of like building a career. Yeah. So I think ever since graduating uni, I always felt like I had this very entrepreneurial spirit. So I've actually started and stopped quite a few side hustles. So I'm not really one to call myself like a founder, a CEO, kind of those type terms, or even like entrepreneur. But I do refer to myself a lot as like a serial side hustler. I'm like very interested in a lot of things, and I like jumping and trying a lot of new things. So I run a few side hustles after hours when I finish my 9-to-5 work, as well as do a lot of content creation online. But a lot of the focus around the businesses that I launch and the content that I create is the objective for me has always been to add value to other people's lives in some way.
That's the common thread.
Yeah.
Okay. And what are some of those, are you able to share some of those side hustles that you've done in the past?
Yeah. So my first one flopped completely, and I think I realized why. And that's why I'm like, I always encourage people to, if they have something they want to try, just try it and fail fast if it's not really working, because you actually learn so much from it. So back then when e-commerce was starting, everyone wanted to have like a fashion label. Everyone wanted to be like a show pony or whatever it was. Showpo. And I was like, oh, I'll start a fashion brand. I'm not a fashion girly. I'm not really that interested in clothes. But I was like, yeah, I'll make this work. It looks easy at like 22 years old. So I bought like a whole bunch of stock from China, maybe like 8K worth. Started social media marketing, slapped together a website, really quickly realized like fashion's not for me. I didn't know how to drive sales. I didn't know how to talk about fashion. I probably didn't pick the right stock items either. So I realized like product wasn't something I wanted to work on. And then after that, I guess going off my sort of corporate career as well as it being in marketing, I started 2 other side hustles. So one called Get Me Hired, and that was more focused around helping people write resumes, helping people prepare for interviews.
Oh, yeah, right.
And that kind of came around the time of like when we went into the pandemic and everyone was losing their job. And I was sort of sitting at home and was like, how can I help these people? Like I'm sitting at home doing nothing during the pandemic. So I started that, and that really like took off for a while as well during the 2 years we were in lockdown. And I created a lot of free content just around how to like improve your resume and how to interview better and how to grow your career as well. But I think for me, I found it really hard to scale that business because it was this really kind of like weirdly morally conflicting thing where I was like, these people are out of work. I really don't know how to make money off people that are already out of work.
Like you feel bad charging them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, this doesn't feel really scalable for me. So I kind of put a bit of a pause on that.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I kind of fell into it rather than it was like a something that I was driven by. But with my digital marketing career, I had a lot of people reaching out to me that own small businesses. They were kind of like, how do we just even get a website? How do we even like get an Instagram page? And for me, it was then going back to the whole, how do I help people? And then I was like, oh, I just want to get some of these small businesses that are offline, just getting their first start online. Getting them online was like my first goal. But then also after a while, I was kind of like, oh, I already do marketing at work, 9 to 5. I don't really want to do marketing extra work after. So it's like 24 hours of marketing work was a bit much for me. So I sort of, I still have a couple clients on, but I kind of cap it at a couple clients that I help. Otherwise, now my third one, and I think this is my most favorite one and my most passionate one, is dating apps suck.
So dating apps suck. So how did the premise start? Like obviously a lot of this sounds like it's very like serendipitous. Like it's, you sort of have an idea, then you roll with it. But then obviously dating is a whole different thing because I'm imagining like everyone's on the apps, hence the name dating apps suck. So can you give us a little bit of context why you've named it that? And then even before you start talking about dating apps suck, can you tell us why you think dating apps suck?
So I'm like, and now I've fully leaned into my like tagline around dating apps suck because for me, being in modern dating, I've experienced being on dating apps maybe since I was 20. On and off between relationships, between situationships, between a whole bunch of stuff.
Wait, sorry, what was that?
Situationships.
Can you, what's that?
Oh, you're really showing your Zoom.
Hey, look, okay, just for context, all right, I'm 34 and I have a wife and I've been in a relationship for like literally 10 years.
Yeah,
so I've literally missed the whole dating app era.
You're
right?
one of the lucky ones.
So yeah, so I'm gonna actually just really ask some really rudimentary questions probably in this interview. So anyway, so I'll probably ask you to explain things like this. So, situationship, what is it?
All right. So traditionally, we had a simple model of a relationship, which is like boy meets girl or any other sex, and you know, there's a spark. You ask them out on a date. You have a couple more dates, you like a progressive relationship, you know, engagement, marriage. Now it's a whole muddy mess of grey area and undertones and games and confusion. So boy meets girl, it's no longer go on date, like each other, a few more dates, engage, marriage. It's now like each other, avoid each other for a little bit, don't really be honest about how you feel.
Is this like the new 2023 version of like It's Complicated?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes people like if I don't know, maybe this is a term that you might be more familiar with, more like
oh, that's offensive. Yes,
no,
anyway, go on.
I don't know if this is too crude to say, but like buddies kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what it is, but sometimes not with the part. Like just buddies that kind of see
just
each
emotional torture.
Yeah.
Right, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And then so you're kind of like in a relationship, but without the term, without the label, but not really exclusive. There's a lot of variations to it now.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay. Anyway, where were we at?
You were talking about situationships and why you don't like dating apps, your experience with them.
Yes. So at the start, like there was this sort of like golden age of dating apps, which was when, Tinder was first out and people kind of like, oh, like how do we meet people in a new way? And we're like, oh, apps. But then there was still kind of like a stigma around it where it's like, oh, what if we meet like a murderer like on Tinder? But it was new, so people were still trying it. And I guess people's perception and mindset around how they approach dating apps was like, what a great new opportunity to meet and connect with people that I otherwise wouldn't have met in any other setting. So I would actually say I'm responsible for a lot of weddings that have happened because I got a lot of my friends on apps as well. So they're all in relationships or married with kids. Anyways, I did that.
Ultimate woman.
And I would say this would be a good couple of years ago when I was kind of like that golden age of dating apps. But the progression since then, and I don't know if it's like how much the pandemic had a play in it or, mental health or even just people's realization that they wanted more from life outside of just dating, that people have approached dating apps and in a very like dismissive way, and there's like a negative mindset to it. It feels like a chore. We're all digitally fatigued. We don't really want to message on a screen anymore. So I think it's really shifted the dating culture. And I noticed that in myself as well, because after a while, when I was like, I used to be like genuinely curious about people. Now I'm like, oh my God, I have to ask them about the weather.
Yeah.
On an app for like the 20th guy I've swiped on. So it was just exhausting. After a while, dating apps became exhausting. And I think that transitioned for everyone. So over time, it just was like this thing that you did because you wanted to find your partner, but no one really wanted to be there. So that's why I was like, dating apps really suck.
Okay, so hang on. So let me just repack that. So you're saying, because like obviously the big thing with dating apps now is like there's more choice by the sounds of it as well, right? Where back in the day, it was really more around sort of like serendipity and like you'd meet people, get introduced, which is somewhat what dating apps sort of manufactures in that way. But I think obviously with the fatigue and that sort of stuff, people are essentially going, oh, I've got to do this every single time. Like it's the repetition of this that you're like, okay, I'm a bit burnt out. I don't really want to do this anymore. Is that sort of?
Yeah, exactly right.
Got it. And then so setting up dating apps suck. Can you just walk us through the early days? Like how did it all start? And,
I have a couple of friends that are like, we claim this as part of our idea. So they're like, we want shares. Like, but I guess how it all started was me and a couple of guy mates were sitting around having a chat and just reminiscing on like, if you think back to uni and sort of like uni societies and like uni clubs and even like how we approach that, because everyone had like a community. And then when it lended itself to like house parties, people would go invite their plus ones, invite social circles, and then lots of social circles would mix. And that's where people actually met people that they ended up in relationships with because you got to mix your social circles. And we were talking about how like, it's really hard to do that, especially as you get older, because we just lose friends as we get older. We're not really growing our social circle. So when all your friends start getting into like relationships or married and stuff like that, you kind of like dwindle away as like the last few remaining single people in your group. And you're like, oh fuck, I'm not really meeting anyone new. So when we were having a think about it, I was sitting there, I was like, how can I recreate sort of the environment that house parties had or even like uni clubs had where people could start bringing and mixing their social circles again and then potentially meeting the love of their life. So at first, my first product idea on how I would approach this was renting out Airbnbs and hosting house parties.
Oh, okay. How did that go down?
I got banned.
Yeah, fair enough.
Look, I don't know. I didn't actually end up doing one, but I think it was just like in my chaos of like booking and deleting and rescheduling an Airbnb. I don't know if they flagged my account or something, but then I just got banned.
So it never happened to begin with?
Never. Like my first idea of it. But then I was like, this is not going to work. I was like, I'm going to get fined. I'm going to get banned. Something's going to go wrong. But so I was like, just like umming and ahhing for it. But anyways, I got banned. And I was like, I think this isn't the best idea on how to do it anyway. And then it lent itself, I'll actually get a venue. So like an actual venue, actual liquor license, all that stuff. And then I did one event right before we went into lockdown of the pandemic, and it was a charity mix and mingle. I don't know if you guys remember, well, it was like the huge bushfires that happened early 2020. Yep. And I was like, one, for me, I was like, I really wanted to do something to help in that time as well. And two, I had this idea that I wanted to launch. So I was like, I gave myself 1 month because I was going overseas the month after to run for the first time about 100 packs event, charity singles thing. So yeah, it was really lovely. But I ran at a Golden Monkey in Melbourne. It was.
Oh, Knox venue? Is that
Yeah,
right? Knox okay,
I love Golden Monkey in Melbourne.
Yeah.
It was, and Adam was so nice because it was like a charity event. So he was like throwing like a free drink for everyone.
Nice.
It was really good. And then sold that out and ended up selling about 120 tickets. So it was a sold out event.
Nice.
Okay. All right. So there's a few things I want to know here. Firstly, how did you? Well, it sounds probably easy in hindsight, but how did you get 120 people in there? Like, what was the process there?
I did social media marketing by myself every day for like 3 weeks.
Was this on TikTok or Instagram or both?
At the time, TikTok, Instagram.
And did you get much resistance out of this? Like, what was the feedback like when you sort of announced this was happening?
I think there was a lot around like, oh, I don't need a dating event. Oh, is this a singles event? But I think the fact that it was a charity event, people were more willing to give it a go.
Right.
Yeah. I did have a mix of, because it was a little bit confused at the time, it wasn't just a singles event. I did have some couples attend because they just wanted to come support. In hindsight, I think it made things too confusing.
Right.
But
What do you mean? Like people walked up to people going, oh, you're in a relationship. Like,
yeah,
see you
I had
later.
to have like 2 different types of bands, like
Right.
a red for like in a couple and a green for like available.
Got it.
Yeah. So
And swingers in between or something like that.
yeah, as orange, you don't know what that is.
Yeah, got it.
But it at first, yeah, there was a bit of like, oh, what is this? But then I think from the fact that it kept selling, tickets kept selling, friends kept referring friends, eventually 3 weeks later, it sold out. So word of mouth was really powerful.
Wow. Okay. So the other thing that comes to mind is what was the vibe like, I guess, on the first night? How did you feel about it? What was the feedback like after that?
I learned a lot. Learned a lot from that event. And I think it was one, if you're going to do it kind of like a singles mixer, I didn't brand it that way initially, don't have couples there. It just made it too confusing for people because they were talking to someone and they'd look down and be like, oh, well, I can't talk. I'm not allowed to talk to you.
Yeah.
So that was one. And I think for me, I tried to do too many things. I had like a whole like charity raffle going and then I had to like stop people, like audio issues. Like it was chaos. It was fun chaos. Not so much fun for me because I was very stressed.
But for everyone else.
But I think after that event, I was like, I'm going to dial it right back and simplify things a lot.
Yeah. So what's the format now then? Like you've distilled it down. Oh, actually, before you answer that, how many events have you since run? And then what's the format now?
I think I'm coming up to event 16 as of starting. So we obviously went into lockdown, so I could not run anything anymore. I was coming out of lockdown and then people were starting to ask for it again. They were like, where are your dating events? Again, we are still very tired of dating apps. So theme remained consistent. And I was actually watching the show. I love watching these shows, but like Indian matchmaking, Love is Blind, Love on the Spectrum. And it was actually Love on the Spectrum. There was a specific episode where they ran speed dating and it was like 5 guys, 5 girls. You go in a little venue, you have a little quick date. And at the end, the matchmaker would collate all the matches and then exchange their details. And I was like, this is the cutest thing ever. And speed dating's always existed, but I was kind of like, there is a stigma around it. It's like a bit cool, a bit tacky. Is it desperate for me to go? There was this whole thing where I was like, how am I going to get people to go? But again, I think because I'd built up a sort of pool of people from the initial charity mix and mingle, I reached out to them and did some more social media marketing and launched my first speed dating event in Melbourne April last year. So we're coming up to a year since the launch.
Okay.
And that format is actually very small and intimate. It's varied, but typically around 24 people, 12 guys, 12 girls.
Oh, really intimate. Okay.
Yeah, very small. Typically at a bar where there's like individual seating, so I can separate up the pairs. Every pair gets 5 minutes to date each other.
Okay.
I'll ring a bell and you got to rotate.
Okay.
Yep. And then let's say if you're a guy, you get a list of girls. And then if you're a girl, you get a list of guys. Throughout the night, you tick who you would like to exchange your contact details with. At the end of the night, I collect those matchmaking cards. My team does the matching. And then if you both tick each other, we'll exchange your contact details.
So it's like analog Tinder.
Yeah, literally.
Right? And so like you just go, yep, tick on both sides and then match, right?
There's paper and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like really analog.
Like pens and
Holy. Okay. Now, I got a lot of questions in my head now. I'm just trying to unpack it. So then, obviously this format was very different to the first one. Was this like something that you finessed over time, or was it like second event? It was like just like that. I'm actually curious about the iteration process, because obviously you would have seen trial and error through this process to see what works and doesn't work. So again, going back to the whole feedback, what was everyone's feedback like with this speed dating style format?
So good. The singles mixer, whilst it's in terms of numbers wise, how many people you meet, the excitement of it, the hustle bustle of it is good. But I think the concept of speed dating and the way that it was run, just if you're nervous by date 2, you're not. You get a fair shot with everyone. You don't have to actively approach anyone because you get 12 dates.
So you're taking the intimidation factor out of it.
Yeah. And I think it was like, for me, after that first event, so many people, when the formal side was done, hung back for the rest of the night. And I think it was because speed dating, if you think about it, like people that would go to it, would pay for a ticket to it, have a very clear intention. Their mindset of where they're at in terms of how serious they are, like willing to give something a shot rather than like flicking someone on an app is different. And I think that made, it like curated a set of people that were like just there for the right reason.
Yeah, gotcha. Like they weren't just having a fling. Like it was actually genuinely high intent, because you're going to get up off your ass basically and spend a night out at an event to then connect with possibly someone who you might date and, you know, basically see afterwards.
Yeah. I just want to ask as well, like if I were to go into one of these events, for example, like what would the process be and what could I expect from it?
So for speed dating in particular, I do a lot of comms before it just to make sure, you know, calm everyone's nerves. I've got informational videos around that I send through as well, just to outline the structure so that everyone knows what they're expecting. But on the night, when you arrive, you'll be greeted by my hosts and you receive your dating pack. So your dating pack has your name tag, your drink card, your matchmaking card, all the good stuff. And they explain, what goes on. And then once everyone has about 15, 20 minutes, just mingling time, getting their drink, I do an intro speech just to outline how the night is run and sort of just to calm everyone's nerves. Because I find like when I go around the room asking, you know, how you're feeling and stuff, everyone's response is nervous.
Right.
Everyone. Even if you're like, I've known them as like extroverted, confident, loud people. I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm like, are you? So yeah, so I do try to like make sure that like it's an environment where they feel safe. And then I get the ladies to take a seat because their table is set for the night. They get to stay there, and the guys are the ones that have to rotate every 5 minutes.
That's a shame.
Nice.
No, I'm just kidding.
I've had a lot of requests. Guys are like, why can't we sit at the table? Like, you know, I'll maybe change it up one day. But yeah, and then right into it, 5 minutes, and then between every 4 to 5 dates, I give you guys a 10-minute break.
Right. Have you seen any, I guess the word's like trends, and I know, again, I always say like this is a loaded question because it can go anywhere, but like what are some insights that you can sort of distill based on now running about 16 of these events? Any trends, any things you see? What's your insights there?
People that are already out and about, let's say if they're like clubbing a lot, they've got larger social circles, they go to like festivals and events and stuff, typically wouldn't come to these. I think it because they have the opportunity and the network to meet new people already. Whereas the ones that I find come through for me are kind of like, you know, their social circles are all married now. They're not really a fan of dating apps. They're just going to work and going home. Like it's not a lot of opportunity in real life for them to just meet someone new. That's what I've noticed first. But then that was initially, and I think now because of the demand on like, and the feedback that's come through, the people that were in the clubs and they're starting to come through and be like, hey, actually there is a new way to meet people, not just that.
So they're open to it as well.
Yeah. So it's actually, and that's what I find really interesting, where it takes like, I want to say because I love my like first cohort of people, guinea pigs to try out
pilot
the event.
Program,
yeah, pilot program. That's better. To trial it and be like, hey, this isn't tacky, this isn't desperate. You meet normal people, not weirdos. And from that, it's just kind of snowballed into like, hey, it's kind of cool now. Like I want to go to one. Yeah.
Nice.
Can I just ask, like, out of curiosity, is there usually an age group that comes to these that you found?
My wait list at the moment, the range that I've currently got is 18 to 57. I think I got a 60-year-old through the other day.
Oh.
I don't know how they found it.
That's cool.
I like TikTok.
So
I don't know.
It's very broad range.
But there's outliers. I'd say my main cohort is within 22 to 38.
Okay.
But the events I've typically been running, because I need to make sure there's enough people for each session, around your sort of 24s to 36s is where your
Still a broad
mid-20s
range.
to
Yeah, that's quite a big range.
Yeah. And I think that naturally because of that, it's because of my network immediately. So that's why that's the network it's at the moment. But I'm really hoping that I get more older and younger so that I can give those events a go as well.
Off of that, I'm again very curious. Like you had a lot of questions as well.
No,
but
okay.
how does that work in sense of splitting the age
Segmenting
group?
it?
Yeah, segmenting it.
Yeah.
And is there like a limit of
Such
age?
marketers. How do you segment?
Don't worry,
How do
I
you
like
tag
the
them
data, the insights, the remarketing.
Yeah. like say if you've got someone who's 22 and then someone who's 38, like do you make sure that these groups in these events are separated and they don't cross paths, or do people give preferences of what
Can
age
I just layer onto
limit?
this question as well?
Oh my God.
It's so not just that, but do people actually want to intermix from an age range perspective? So what's your thoughts on that?
So far, I haven't really given them a choice. I think I kind of just made a judgment call, and this is because I haven't figured out the algorithm of how I want to build my website yet. But I kind of do it as like a random mid-20s to mid-30s, and I'm kind of look on the events. You're going to meet younger guys, you're going to meet older guys, you're going to meet guys your age. Hopefully, you're open to that. And it feels like people haven't. In terms of the feedback that I get back, no one's had an major issue around meeting a wide range of people, a wide age range. I find it really interesting because there was my first Sydney event 2 weeks ago, a girl there was 28, 29, and there was a guy there that was 24, and actually they hit it off insanely. And she's like, I didn't even notice he was 24.
No.
Yeah. But for me, I think I do try to keep it close, because I do understand, because I even had this discussion with a girlfriend. She's like, if I'm 28, I'm really not looking to meet 24, 25. I want to meet 32. And then it's like, sometimes it gets a bit tricky. So I'm like, maybe for how I build the website, on how I set it, maybe it's like a preference of like, do you prefer 3 years above and 3 years younger, or 5 years above, 5 years younger? And I kind of do it that way. I haven't worked out how to do it with the data yet, but for now, no, I don't give them a choice.
But going off of that as well, like in our prep call, you spoke about one of the reasons why you wanted to create Dating App Suck as well was because on these dating apps, it segments and limits people with their preferences and
Because people
whatnot.
think that's what
Exactly.
they want, right? Yeah. So then are you finding, for example, people going to these dating events and all of a sudden going, like you just said, you're like, holy shit.
Yes.
Like I can talk to a younger guy and like get along, right?
Yes. Okay. So yes. So the core, one of like my core reasons why I wanted to do this in the first place is like, I didn't think about it until I got called out on it. So when I'm on apps, I'm like, Asian, this height, this age, that's my type. And I'm like, when did I form this? I'm like, yeah, it was bizarre, but that's what we do. Those are the questions, those are the prompts that anyone signing up to a dating app gets asked. And then it goes deeper into like religion and smoking or not, children or not. I'm like, you're narrowing it down so far deep, and you're eliminating so many options that you otherwise would have not met at all. And I think we got into like this mindset of boxing people into some sort of category. And it was actually my psych that was like, because like a hot topic was dating. And my psych, she was like, so why do you have these filters? Because she wasn't understanding it either. And I was like, well, I really think like, if he's not this race, if he's not this age, he wouldn't really understand my like culture and traditions and values.
Like
I just
a
don't
narrative
really,
in your head.
Yeah. And I was like, I just don't really want to teach them. They're probably not going to respect it. And she's like, so you're like ruling out the every other race in the world because you think they're not willing to be open to understanding and valuing the same stuff that you do culturally and traditionally? I'm like, yes. And she's like, I really encourage you to change that mindset.
She's like, it's a you problem, not a them.
So your psych is helping you build your business in a lot of ways as
I
well.
was like, damn, girl, yeah. I was like, you make a good point. So from that, I was just like so inspired. I was like, how many of us are sitting there thinking, this is my type, but you've not really given any other person a chance. You've not interacted with them. You've never had a conversation with them. And that's what it is. Like the conversation, to really understand the chemistry, the connection, all of that stuff. You need to be in an environment where you're kind of like stripped away from those filters to really be open-minded about it. And that was one of my main goals for this event, is like get people talking to other people that they would have never done on a day-to-day basis.
Or off the back of that, I can't say the word weird. It's like, what's the most abnormal in the sense that like, you're like, well, I would never have pictured this couple or these two hitting it off. Are you seeing any examples of that?
I wish more people came back and told me about every single experience I had post-event.
Yeah.
But I only get reports back if they're my friends or if they're friends of friends that know have gone to an event.
Okay.
So the only one that I can speak to that I have examples is probably the age one. Culture one I haven't had examples as of yet, and I'm hoping someone tells me that they've come back and they've been willing to date outside of the race preference. But age would be the one for me,
Age would be
younger,
the
older.
Speaking of cultural, is again like the age question. Is there a cultural pool of people that normally come to these events?
I think, again, probably because of how the event has spread out and like my immediate network, it's a bigger chunk of my wait list is Asian. I would say 50 to 60% maybe Asian, and then 40% every other race.
Okay.
But the way that I run events is I, again, have, because people have asked me for specific race, like Asian only or whatever it is. And I really am steering away from that. And I'm going to think about how I start narrowing down and making more niche events, because I really don't want to become like, no, I will only date Asians. So I will only go to an Asian event. So I tend to mix mine, even though it is more Asians on the wait list. But there are some comments that I'm like still taking into consideration, like religion wise. They're like, look, I can only date Muslim. Is that, you know, how you're going to, I'm like, that's something I will be thinking about in my future event plans, as well as like, you know, if you're Indian, sometimes you can only date specific types of Indian too. Like there's a lot of nuances that I'm still working out how to.
Yeah. Do you feel conflicted like when you get this, like in the sense, like I'm just imagining being in your position and like you've got your general dating events, which you're doing now. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, I want like a certain race. I want a certain religion. And then I want a certain segment, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, so many permutations and combinations, right? But then, you know, sort of from a value standpoint, you're like, well, I wish people would just not have to worry about the segmentation side and just go in open-minded and explore, you know, sort of ideas there. So how do you like grapple with that, and how do you make decisions on that? Or are you still working through that?
Yeah, definitely still something I'm working through. And I think for me, the messaging has always been like, if you're not restricted for any reason because of actual like religion and race and parents and whatever it is, and you have the opportunity to experience something different outside of your usual preference, go. But there are some people, I understand that my event is not for them because they need to date within a specific whatever it is, or they're hard and fast. I'm like, no, I will not try a new experience or meet new other people. Then they're not the people I sort of target.
All right.
To come through.
And are you seeing particular, and of course you probably don't get all of the data because you just match and then people go away and they do their thing, right? Yeah. But are you seeing any particular techniques is probably the wrong word, but like any like things that people are doing during these events that's leading to greater success? Like any insights there?
I think the open and warm approach really works. I found people that are more willing to jump in and give it a go and chat to someone like as if you're not trying to be like, is this my wife? It's more like
like this clipboard of questions. Do you want children?
Actually, I have a story on that. Yeah, you don't approach like that, but it's like approaching it as, because you've got 5 minutes. Like it's approaching as like, do I like talking to this person? And do I want to talk to this person for a little more? Whether it's a friend, whether it's a new connection, your network, like professionally, do I like them? And I think it's that, like keeping it like, do I just enjoy this person's vibe? Because I found that, because in the reverse side, it's like, I absolutely understand people have like, you know, a motivation or an objective on like for these events or for dating. Like I had a guest come through and she was very certain on, I want to find a person that does not want to have kids and is dead set sure on that. You're not on the fence. You're telling me. She's like, unless he can tell me dead set, I will never have kids. I have no interest in having kids. I don't want to progress. And I was like, oh, but like there's a lot of guys that haven't really thought about that. They haven't even decided yes or no. She's like, no, I don't want a fence sitter. I want someone that's dead set, no kids. I'm no kids. And I don't want to date someone that later down the track, he is like, oh no, now I want kids, and then leaves me because she had that experience in the past. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough.
So what'd you do?
That's a hot topic.
Well, I had to come through obviously, but I think she did. I don't think she got matches. And I think it was because she couldn't find the guys that were like dead set. And because like when a girl, I think without context, when someone asks you that question, I find naturally guys will be like, oh, I don't know, yeah, maybe. But I don't think they realized she was looking for, no, I don't want kids, because they wouldn't answer that off the bat.
Oh, as in like they didn't know they didn't think about what answer she was actually looking for, and then it's like an interview, like not crafting the answer that she was basically.
Yeah, because I think they were just thinking like, well, when a girl asks that question, they're probably like, oh, she's probably interested in kids. So I better not say no.
Yeah.
But no, she was looking.
And the way she operated would have just been like instant elimination. Yeah. Even if you're uncertain about it, it has to be like absolute certainty as well.
Or if she was like 100%, she should have been like, hey, I don't want kids. Do you match me? Yes. Kind of thing.
All right.
Interesting.
Okay.
This episode is produced and brought to you by Social Wave. Social Wave is a strategic content marketing agency helping businesses grow revenue using video, podcasts, and SEO. Head on over to socialwave.com.au to find out more. Now back to the show.
And as someone who has a wife and a kid, i.e. me, and just being plainly ignorant about it, like the dating scene now in terms of like what you're seeing, like how are you seeing people approach this? Are you finding people mostly just being like, sort of like you said, just forthcoming, very warm about it, and and then they hit it off, and then obviously you matchmake and they go away? Or are you seeing some quirks here and there? Like basically, I guess the question is like, if I'm someone who is listening to this and I'm interested in going to these events, how do I maximize my success?
What are the hot tips?
Yeah, what are the hot tips exactly? That's right. Because I'm now going, Brenda's has a PhD in dating at the moment, and she's got all this evidence-based stuff. So really curious to know, like, and it's not necessarily like saying, oh, what your advice is, but just like, what are you seeing,
And or does it differ with females and males as well? Because I know that the situation might be different in the environment.
I'm going to be cliche a little bit. You can't maximize your success at these events. It's not a project.
I'll get an A+ in this.
And I'm going to say so you got to be yourself.
So cliche. That's so cliche.
But that's why.
Okay, but that's the truth.
Yeah. Because if you be yourself, and this is why I'm like, because you're only meeting 12 people, I encourage you to be yourself, because sometimes you hit it off with all 12, but sometimes it's none. Because it's like, if you're thinking about a dating app and you're matching with like 100 people, like how many of them are actually going to be the right fit for you? So sometimes between 12, you might not meet your person. And people, have matches, but sometimes going to one event doesn't lead to a marriage. But I think it's more like, if you are yourself, then you give yourself the best opportunity to meet the right person. But I would say the tip is, I personally, if I was like, I'm putting myself in I haven't gone to my event yet, but I like to have a question that gives me a little bit of information around something I value. So my question is typically something always like, if money wasn't an issue, what would you be doing with your life? Or what would you be doing on like a daily basis? Because for me, it's like, I know I work because I need money, but like all my side projects and my ventures and all that stuff, that's the stuff I'm more passionate about. So like that question for me gives me a bit of information, where to me, it's like, helps me decide on like whether someone's like the right fit or not, or like I want to chat to them.
So it's like used both as an icebreaker, but also a topic starter. So then it kind of spins off that as well. Yeah. And you haven't gone to your own events, but have you used that question before? What kind of responses have you had?
On my dates, yes. Yeah. What kind of responses have I had? I think some of them are like, is this an interview? They're like, that's really serious. I'm like, no, let's get to the point. Like, I want to
clipboard out.
Funny side note, my psych was always like, you can't approach a date like an interview. Like, you're not allowed to do that. But I think, some of them, like a common answer is always like traveling, seeing the world. I love that too. Yeah. But I'm like, you need money to travel, so what else are you doing for money?
I was going to say, you've mentioned your psych a few times, and so I think we're changing gears a little bit here as well. As you were saying that, and obviously Viv, she had a prep call with you as well. Just mental health in general, right? So this might be sort of digressing a little bit from your expertise around dating and things like that. But we were having a chat just off camera just before this about sort of normalizing seeing a psych and maintaining your mental health and things like, just like you go to the gym and the exercise. So what's your stance on that? Like, how long have you been seeing a psych? And
I would say my first sessions would have been 4 to 5 years ago. And then I was on and off for a little bit, but then about maybe since the last 3 years, been pretty consistent on like a monthly-ish, sometimes like every second month. Because for me, it's like, and it was really interesting because I now have like quite a few friends in psych or are psychs. And I think a lot of us approach like therapy and psychology as like, okay, my leg is broken, I need it fixed. But I think it's a more beneficial way to approach it. It's like car maintenance. Like you kind of just want to have like a regular checkup, a regular like touching base with someone that's objective to give you a bit of a steer on like, you know, how you're feeling, helping you understand yourself a bit more. And I think for me, like therapy over the last few years is like something that has made me the most mentally resilient more than I've ever been before. And I think how that has translated into like my dating life as well. It's like I've learned to be a better communicator. I've learned to self-regulate my emotions more. I've learned to like understand other people's emotions more and where they're coming from when they're reacting a certain way. And it's like really helped me with that. And I think like even though it's like kind of a bit of a side topic, but this is so big in dating, right? Because it's like a lot of us like come from past experiences that shapes how we approach adult relationships. And I find like especially now with all the TikTok content out there around self-care and self-help and getting help, girls are really, and I don't want to generalize this, but like really putting in the work to like developing themselves from that and like working through those past traumas, all that stuff. And the trend that I've been seeing from like the people that I chat to and like, you know, why they've had not that much luck with dating or even using apps and stuff. And they're like, oh, it's just, you know, I really wish this guy would just tell me how he felt or was vulnerable or like, you know, was a better communicator and, you know, just, and it's like a running joke and I hate it, but it's kind of like they should just go to therapy if they want to date me kind of thing. But on the flip side, like even chatting to the guys as well, it's kind of like, well, they've really never had the environment or the encouragement to be like, hey, like go get help. Like it's like still like frowned upon a little bit, or they just think like, you know, no, I don't need to ask for help. And I think that's where the barrier comes through in dating, where like the girl's kind of like, oh, get help, we support you. Yeah. And the guy's like, no, don't need it sometimes. And I'm really overgeneralizing, but that's how it translates into like sometimes why things don't always work out. Because like back then I would say like, at least my parents' generation, it's like, if times are tough, stick through it, work through it. Maybe not know how to have the right tools to do it, but it was much more resilient like that in terms of dating and relationships and marriage. Whereas now it's a little bit more like, oh, it's hard, no worries. I've got about 100 other options.
It goes back to the whole thing about choice, right? And then people become probably a little bit more brittle in that sense because they go, oh, there's always just an alternative. There's always a backup. There's always a safety option as well. Was there, when you first started seeing getting therapy, was there a trigger for that? Or you just realize you're like, look, I think it's actually a bit like changing the car, you know, and maintaining the car engine. I just need to go and see a shrink. Or is it shrink the right terminology as well? Or what's the...
I think shrink is more psychiatrist, or I think it might be an American term.
Yeah,
shrink is more...
Shrink, I think, is more American.
Yep.
I just go by psych.
Psych, okay. Yeah. So was there an event or a trigger?
I think it's the same way I approach my businesses, weirdly enough. I was kind of like... I think I'm good, but I think there's things I can work on to be better. And that's why I was like, okay, so how do I do this? And it wasn't quite mentor that I was looking for. I was like, mentally, I want to work on like, you know, why I get anxious over this thing or why I feel like low self-confidence in this thing. And I was like, just things where I was like, I just want to work through it because I want to, sounds so kind of wanky, but be better as a person. And that's what triggered it. So yeah, it was like just nothing major. But it was for me, it was like, I want to keep developing myself.
I find that pretty bizarre because most people, and I have seen a psychologist in the past because of some mental health around just stress at work and, you know, was starting to like manifest in like physical symptoms and things like that. And there was a tipping point where I was just like, I got to get help. And, that was my trigger. But I don't know many people who think like yourself where you're like, I'm seeing it in a proactive manner and I'll go and see someone. Like, is there something like, I don't know if there was anything at all, maybe there wasn't, but like, can you attribute where you're getting this thinking from?
Honestly though, I think the timing of it, I would say those were some of the main issues why I started, but it was coming out of my first long-term relationship as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a bit of reflection and self-assessment during that time.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about it off camera as well. It was like going back to how you said it's not about the problem, but we were also talking about how there was this one influencer and she was saying when she goes to therapy, she said to her therapist, like, I come here now and I don't have anything bad to talk about and I don't know what to talk about because nothing's going bad in my life. And her therapist said to her, it's okay. that you've gotten to that stage is actually good, and we should actually be talking about all the good things happening in your life, because that's also good progress. Again, like going back to the whole car maintenance thing, when things are going good, you want to be able to learn how to celebrate that too, just as much as you want to work through issues happening in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you talk about with your?
It's always like, what's the hot topic of the month?
Yeah,
For a
does
while,
someone
it was
come with an
dating.
agenda? Like, you know,
Well, I mean, like in my day, like I'm in consulting, but my day-to-day job is like a project manager, and I think you can tell why. I like to project manage my life in the same way. So I'm like, all right, today's the meeting agenda is psychologist lady. But I always do think about I like before a session, I'll just think about the month that just passed, and it was like, what was the thing that kind of like threw me off balance entirely? I was like out for the day, upset, anxious, whatever it was, and then take that example into her and sort of unpack.
got it. Okay. Have there been any useful questions that she sort of frames up with this sort of stuff?
I mean, this is only like personally attributed to like how I am as a person, but I'm like I jump to assumptions and conclusions very quickly, and I make up narratives or like stories in my head that have not yet happened. And that can apply to career or dating or friendship or whatever it is. And she, I guess one of her things, and something I keep trying to work on now, is trying to be more present with what are the actual facts, rather than being like, I have missing information, let me fill in the gaps myself.
Got it. So she's like, I was going to say, she's sort of picking out, I mean, I use the term mental models, sort of blind spots in your thinking, because I think as humans, we have like fallacies around the way we approach things. So I mean, as an example, I was talking a bit about mental models one day, we were in the car, and it was like confirmation bias, you know, just reaffirm, right? That's happened before, you know, and then there's like sunk cost fallacy, which is like, I'm so deep into it, I might as well keep going.
Yeah, that's
and a lot of these things, and I think a lot of people do have that and they don't realize, and I think having a therapist actually helps with a lot of this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that finding a therapist is like dating. Do you have any advice for people when they date around for a
Can't date your
therapist?
I think it's against the law, isn't it?
But yeah, that too.
I learned that from Suits.
How about I run a therapy speed dating, and you can like therapy speed dates.
Whoa, that's
that's a new
an
event.
interesting one. People just be crying during the whole dating scene.
But it is awkward finding a therapist, because I went through the experience of having to find a therapist, and I eventually found one. It wasn't the greatest after a few sessions, but you do have to go through the whole unpacking your story, them asking you questions, you asking them questions. It is like an interview as well, because you want to be with this person long term, because you've already invested so much of your emotional baggage with them. Did you land with this therapist and then stick with them, or did you go through a few?
Nah, same like my dating life. She's my fourth.
Okay.
Yeah, so my first three, I think I gave each of them sort of like 2 or 3 sessions, and I was like, I wasn't getting the insights that I was looking for. I wasn't getting like I think the psych term is like breakthroughs.
Like the aha moments, right?
Yeah, that I was looking for. And I was like, the style wasn't quite right. Someone was like a bit too junior, so they didn't have the experience to sort of like be like, yo, call me out my shit. And one of them was like too like clinical. So it was like, they really was like, oh, the psych term for this. I'm like, but this one, and I think, I've only ever tried women, but this one, I don't know if it was like a part because of her age, because she is a young mum, or if it just like, I got lucky, but I met her, and I think within the first 1 to 2 sessions, I was like spilling everything out to her. I think I cried by my third one. It was like a very instant, like I knew, oh my God, it's like dating. I knew.
Yeah.
So 3 years later, she's been the one.
Wow.
Culturally, can I ask, is she Asian as well, or is she of a different background?
Oh, she's Western, Caucasian.
Caucasian, okay. Because I know a lot of people also say that when you're dating around for a therapist, like you try and stick within your cultural...
Because they understand.
Because they understand, depending on what you're talking about and what you're coming to them with.
Yeah. I've actually... it's interesting because I had like a couple of friends as well that when they were asking me about my journey, sort of like how I found and stuff, they're like, I really wish there was like more like ethnic psychs and more, because then, like being able to relate to like certain situations, upbringings, traditions, much easier, right? And I think it was like, for me, I don't know if it's because I'm always been a bit like more westernized. I mean, we're all westernized, like being born and raised in Australia. But my mindset to things was always like less Asian. And I think it was as well, it was like, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is like such a good point where I'm like, well, I didn't really need just an Asian psych. She is white, and she took the time to understand traditions and culture, and sort of like parents, like Asian parents being raised by Asian parents, and sort of some of the pitfalls that come from that. Because overall, right, we're all human. So it's like, yes, there's nuances to different situations, but overall, like, there's things we experience, human experiences.
Yeah.
Side note, just not to do with mental health real quick, because it just popped in and I'm going to forget this later, is the other thing that I've seen like a repeated theme is like you're sort of doing your full-time job and then you've got these side hustles here. Would you eventually move and do this full-time? And like, what's the plan there?
My parents would have a heart attack. So I think when I started this, I never really thought about it because I was like, you know what? I love my corporate career. I love doing side hustles. I love overwhelming myself with lots of things to do. But it's getting to a weird point where it's like, I'm seeing like the beauty in like being my own boss, running my own show.
Because you've got a whole team as well.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point where, and a lot of friends that own their own businesses, they're like, dude, if you don't leave at some point, you really can't fully scale this. Like it needs 100% of your time if you really want this to blow up. But I think for me, being raised with like 9 to 5, stable career, stable income, safe. You did a whole uni degree on this. What do you mean you run some dating events for fun and you want to leave your job? So it's like the whole thing around, Asian parents not understanding sort of like, I guess, the new ways of working and the new opportunities that we can take advantage of now. That's really kind of like putting me in a hard spot. But I think what I'm working towards is more stability around my events, more stability around like the foundation of it, my team, everyone's properly trained. And once I feel like me, it's like I take secure risks. That's not like a thing.
Calculated risks.
Yeah. So I'm like, I feel some level of security around what I'm doing, then I'm going to bounce. Don't know what that timing looks like for now, but that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah.
No plan to leave.
Because I'm just thinking, you're saying like wait list. We've done 16 events over the last pretty much year. Like great results. Everyone's happy. And like the entrepreneur mind in me is like, get into it, right?
Yeah.
But then there's obviously, and maybe there's a topic with your therapist, but it's like saying, it's like you sort of like, you've got the almost the, not even the Asian element, but I think the risk aversion element of going, right, it needs to be a certain point of safety for you to then go, yeah, okay, I'm cool with, making that leap of faith as well. So, it's interesting to hear that because, I'm just thinking like as an external third party, like you said, a lot of your mates and business owners that, they're just like, you should just do it because it's so obvious to us on the outside as well. But when you're in the weeds, it's really hard.
Like, oh God.
It just makes you
the
squirm.
minute I quit my job, everything's going to fail and I'm going to be homeless.
Well, you've mentioned your parents a few times as well. Like, how do they come into the picture and what do they think about everything?
At first, I think they were hoping I would just be, like do my uni degree, do my 9 to 5 job, get married, have kids. I've done none of those things. I did the uni degree and the 9 to 5 job. But, it was always the stuff like, don't move out before you get married. And they really were hoping I would go down the traditional path like my cousins and all of that stuff. But I have always been like, sorry, this is the direction I'm taking. So when I started up like all these side hustles and side businesses, like I do get stressed out. And like when I do go to see them and stuff, they're like, why do you do these hobbies that stress you out so much? I'm like, I don't know.
It's a toxic relationship.
Yeah. So they've never really fully understood like my drive to do things outside of my 9 to 5 because they're like, your 9 to 5 sustains you. That's enough. Just live your life. I'm like, but I am living my life. But they, I think, realize, and I don't know if it's just like me wearing them down, but like they've kind of realized like they can only advise and consult now because I kind of just run my own way and do whatever I kind of feel like doing, like moving to Sydney.
Have you had the conversation with them about potentially doing this full time?
Yeah, it wasn't a good one.
So you did have the conversation?
I floated it because they were like, because I got so angry because like at one point they were like, why are you doing this? I'm like, Mum, eventually when I get made redundant, because it's just natural as a part of a corporate career, I'm mentally prepared for it. I want to be sure I have something to fall back on. Like I want to show I have options. Like it happens. It happens to women. It happens to women more so once they have children as well. Like these are things that happen and I want to be ready for that. And I think it's just coming around to it, but she's just like, okay, just make sure you eat and sleep. And
the basics.
Survive. Well, before we wrap things up as well, like, do you have any words of advice people who are listening who might be looking to do something similar to you in the sense of side hustles or maybe even just in the dating scene as well? Like what kind of words of advice?
Mental health.
Oh, and mental health as well. Yeah, that's very important.
Not to be too cliche about it, but really try hard to silence out the noise around and not give a fuck about what people think. It's easier said than done. But I think for me, how I like, for example, it's like me posting content on like TikTok. When I first started this, I was like, yeah, I think people would probably look at it and cringe. But who cares? Because like in the grand scheme of things, it's like people are quite tunnel vision with their own lives, and they're actually not. Like you might see something a bit cringe for being like, and then you've literally forgotten it the next day. So like I think it's more beneficial for you to just think about your own life in your own day, because no one else is looking at you. So just do the thing that you wanted to do and kind of shut out any like thoughts around this is going to be embarrassing, someone's going to judge me, someone's going to be cringy. Because through that, I was like, fuck it, I will literally take up any opportunity, do anything, talk to anyone. And from that, it's really propelled like growing my network, my experiences, my opportunities. And it was just all from, at one point I was like, I really am just going to stop caring what people think and just trying what I want to try.
It's really important because I think we were talking as well, once you let go of the idea that people might care so much, you are actually the one that cares the most. And once you let go of it, like the barriers just fall away.
It's very liberating.
Yeah, very, very liberating.
Yeah, it's super liberating. And like I remember when you first reached out to us, you sent like a super long DM. I remember reading it and I was like, whoa. I was like,
she's like, here's my life.
Out of like obligation. I was like, I gotta read this, right? Who is this Brenda? And then and it was so well put together and very eloquent. And I was like, this is so interesting, because even us running Level Asian, I was like, I could never see ourselves. Well, and this is me being closed-minded. I was like, I never envisaged ourselves having someone like yourself on a show where we talked about these sort of things. And then I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. And then we had a chat. And then obviously we were on a call. And I was like, this is so cool. I was like, I don't know if you remember the call. I was like, there is so much we can talk about. And it's a little bit shame because Davey's not here today because he's at a wedding today. But he would have been very interested, I imagine, also. And it's, anyway, I won't talk about some stories around Davey. But,
is he still coming to my events? He should come.
Well, no, he's married.
He's married now.
But he lives
his
vicariously.
Wedding? Is he his wedding?
He had just had his wedding actually,
okay.
just the weekend gone. But he lives vicariously through, because he's like me. He was like long-term relationship, married now, probably gonna have kids soon, and just like enjoys seeing like single friends just, go through that process of like finding someone. Because like, one of the things is like when you're in a stable, like grass is green on the other side sometimes. And it's just really fun. Like it's just, no harm, no foul type thing. But yeah, I mean, I guess going back to the whole thing, I think, it's very liberating to not have to worry about judgment, right? And just put yourself out there as well. And so, like I think, like credit to yourself, because I know so many people who have essentially denied themselves of opportunities and experiences by just saying no first before even trying it, right? And this sounds like full circle because we talk about dating here, and the example of that particular lady who with the whole kids thing, it was just like, you got to give yourself every opportunity to try everything. Try before you buy. It's like, what's that shit? Like, I don't know, you're too young, but it was like,
here we go.
I don't know if anyone remembers like that. What is it? The Darwin like tourism commercial was like, if you never go, you never know. Like it was like something like that.
No idea.
Okay, so
Showing your old
I'm showing my
age.
age big time here. Please, it's on YouTube somewhere. People get it as a metaphor. But anyway, I've talked enough. But that's I 100% agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
So for people who are looking to attend your events, as well as find you on social media, where can we find you?
Yep. I'm mostly on Instagram under Brenda in Business or Dating App Suck. I've got 2 pages, and if you DM the Dating App Suck Instagram page, the team will handle all of instructions on how you can sign up for an event.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today, Brenda.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So
super fun.
Yeah.
Love this one.
Thanks, Brenda.
Love being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Level Asian podcast. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed the episode. And why not share it with friends and family who might enjoy it too? Also, make sure you head over to levelasianpodcast.com to join our email list and to receive the latest updates and get notified when the next episode drops. If you know a great guest we should feature, email us at contact@levelasianpodcast.com or DM us on our socials in the show notes. Catch you on the next episode.